Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia. This is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hello, honey. We can talk about life's disappointments tonight.
Yeah, whatever. I don't give a shit about that. Um, let's talk about something else that won't put me in a.
Remember the good part is as long as what Rabbi Gordon used to say that his father would say, as long as my name is not in the obituaries, it's going to be a good day.
No, if it's in the obituaries, it's a good day. Um,
Or I used to say, as long as we're not being marched into the gas chamber, everything will be okay.
we're just 5 minutes of torture, and the rest of it's done. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about was hopefully the pictures to go over, but I don't think we'll do that.
Well, I had a couple ideas for tonight.
Sure.
Okay, the first idea I want to start off with, unfortunately, is kind of sad, but I think I would like to talk about it in order to help other people that might be going through the same thing I went through with your father at the end of his life, so I can give some advice about how to cope better with it, like things I learned. And then the second part of our podcast, I thought would be much lighter and funnier, stupid jokes.
Sure. Let's
So we're
start
going
with,
to end
yeah.
okay. So anyway, here we go. I wanted to say that what the situation I had with your father, what could have made it better would have been had I had a better understanding of the situation, which I didn't. Here's what happened. As you know, your father, the last few years of his life, was starting to fall a lot, was starting to become forgetful, and eventually he wasn't properly diagnosed until like the last week of his life, when it was finally a doctor in the hospital who said, hey, this is vascular dementia. Here's what threw me off, and here's what made it worse, was people, and like myself in all my ignorance, and I'm sure there are many people like me, when we have relatives that are starting to show these symptoms. So, if they fall, we take them to the emergency room, and the people in the emergency room usually will tell you, oh, it's a mini stroke. When they say it's a mini stroke, don't take it at that face value. It means something more serious is going on in the brain. So after a series of the so-called mini strokes, he fell several times. We took him for an MRI of the brain. We took him for a brain scan. I don't know what the difference is between an MRI of the brain or a brain scan, but lay people like myself erroneously think that these MRIs, these brain scans, tell it all. They don't. MRIs and brain scans at this point in our history only show the surface of the brain. What they hope to do sometime in the future is they hope to be able to develop technology that can see into the actual functioning of the neurons inside the brain. And they're using the sea animals that they're gathering from the bottom of the ocean, because these sea animals produce their own light. And so they're hoping, by studying these sea animals, bringing them to the surface and experimenting with them, that they can develop, if these sea animals can develop their own light, then maybe they can use this light that the sea animals have developed in a certain way to check into the brain. But believe me, don't make the mistake of thinking that medical science knows it all. They don't, especially the brain. The brain is very complex, and medical science is just barely, in fact, literally, and many times scratching the surface. So what many of us, me and some of your siblings, assumed was we sent him for physical therapy. The physical therapist said he wasn't cooperating, he wasn't practicing the exercises. And we were like in a quandary, because since we believed that these MRIs and brain scans were negative or inconclusive, we assumed he wasn't just trying hard enough, that there were things he could do and he's just not trying. So that's what led to my frustration that dichotomy of thinking that he's just not working hard enough and he could be doing this and he could be doing that. And the truth is, no, they can't. People whose brains are deteriorating cannot, they can't help it. And no doctor sat me down at any point and said to me, what your husband is going through, he cannot help. And don't be angry at him. Don't be frustrated. Just help him as much as you can and realize that he cannot help himself. That this it's nothing he's doing. It's not that he's not trying hard. And I think a couple of your siblings at that time were also very frustrated with him making the same erroneous conclusion that I did, like, oh, the brain scan was negative or inconclusive. That must mean that he's not trying hard enough. No, it simply means that the brain scans cannot really see that much into the brain to see what's actually going on. So if there's so if anyone out there that has a relative, a close relative, or someone you're caring for that has gone through this, where they've had quote unquote these mini strokes and the brain scans were inconclusive, realize, don't get frustrated like I did, and because I'll just make matters worse, realize it's not that they're not trying hard enough. They really cannot help themselves. And you really need to work with them. Also, navigating the healthcare system. Anyone listening to me, I'm telling you that not all Medicare plans, even though Medicare is a federal program, not all Medicare plans are created equal. They do vary from state to state. Florida is not a good place to get Medicare Medicare services. They're very limited. New York is actually the best. New York, I have friends of mine in New York who went through the same thing I did, and they were able to get like almost total care during the day, like 9 to 5. We had to pay out of our own pockets for the little bit of care we got. We would get care in the morning to get him out of bed and get him washed and dressed, and then care in the evening to give him dinner, get him washed and dressed for bed, and get him into bed. But there were many times, like as soon as the daycare person, the healthcare person left, that I'd have a mess on my hands to have to clean up. And
well, I was
but
going,
like I said, as I said, had I known that your father really could not help himself, that there was nothing he could do, it would have made things easier for me. I would have been able to accept it better and to work with it better.
Well, I found out something interesting that might correlate with Tati was, they're starting to do research between diabetes and Alzheimer's and dementia, and how sometimes they believe right now they're starting to discover that perhaps type 2 diabetes can lead to something something similar to being called type 3 diabetes. They haven't officially diagnosed it yet, but that the type 3 diabetes is dementia after type 1 and type 2. Not after type 1, after type 2 diabetes, if it's not taken care of. So that's something to think about with Tati's health, where he could have been having issues with dementia based off of his diabetes and the rest of his diet that he had for so long. Which is why I'm trying to take control over like my diet, and doing what I can, but it's only been about like a week and a half, but I feel like I'm pretty rigorous about it right now. But yeah, it kind of, I guess scared isn't really like the word, but I guess it is scared. It is scary enough to be like, I need to really take charge of myself, and I just can't have certain foods anymore, and I just can't drink certain things anymore. I have to just accept that, because I want to take care of myself, take care of my body, and I don't want to have these issues, and it's why It's why taking care of your body. That's why we kind of had these moments when we were like upset with Tati that he wasn't trying, because we were asking to do things and he would just, get into this angry like moments of yelling and screaming and saying that he just doesn't want to. He's just quitting. He's just done. We saw him for so many
Mhm.
years growing up working so hard. So for us, it was more of like, he would tell us to not be quitters and to work hard, and that we were just kind of paying it backwards from the way he kind of raised us. So that's why we had this whole attitude of like, oh, you're not working hard enough. You're not doing enough. You're not trying hard enough, you know?
And the truth is that he couldn't. It was his brain was starting to go, and there was, you know, like I said, we don't know everything there is to know about the brain, but I think in many respects he he couldn't do that much. He just couldn't. Not that he didn't want to. I think he was just incapable of it. And looking back, I I think 10 years, actually the last 10 years of his life, when I think back to it, the last 10 years of his life was when he actually started to have some very strange behavior. And they say, like, the anger outbursts and things like that, that this is part of the brain starting to deteriorate. This is part of the dementia.
Well, I mean, that's something that I think people should be aware of, that if anyone's listening to this that's a married couple in their 50s, and the spouse just out of random moments starts getting really moody and angry for like long periods of time, it could be a sign of dementia.
Mhm.
And you should probably get an MRI or a brain scan or anything of the
Yeah,
sort
but
as soon as possible.
what I'm telling you though, with dementia, the MRIs, and I've spoken to other people about this who have been in similar positions, the MRIs and the brain scans don't show it because it is such a subtle, it is such a subtle deterioration that it doesn't become obvious until the very end when there's finally a total hemorrhage of the brain that's visible on the screen.
Yeah.
But they say these MRIs, that's so frustrating, is that don't believe that the MRIs and the brain scans are going to show you everything or to show you the whole story. They don't, and
Well,
they're not always accurate. They don't. Because they don't show the inner workings of the brain where the dementia is actually starting.
mhm. Well, sorry, little zombies.
Okay. Funny.
Getting
Let's
upset.
go on to something. Okay, I think there's nothing more to be said about this, and I'm hoping that what I've said can help somebody to cope better
Well,
with, and if they're going through something like this with a relative. I hope what I told you can help you to cope better. That that
well,
that just accept it and realize that they can't help themselves and just do the best you can to help them.
well, I do have a question. I have a few things. I actually wanted to talk to you about. One, I sent you a message a while ago, never responded, and then I sent another message to you, but it's another topic, and you never responded. And I
Oh
tried to
my
talk
goodness,
about
what
it.
was it?
Well, two things. One, I was hoping we could talk about before you had Khani, it was just you,
Yes.
Tati, and Etty. What
Yes.
was that like with that bubble of just you two and just a child, just one child?
It was nice. It's kind
Can you
of nice.
can you
I used to sing the song to your father when I was pregnant. It said, um, it was a spoof. There was an old song, many years ago, when when you and me and baby makes three. It was an old song. I think in the 30s or 40s. My mother used to
Mhm.
sing it, so I used to say, "You and me." Was it you and me? Oh, you and me and Hashem makes three. Who could ask for more? Well, baby makes four. Da 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 da.
That's very cute.
I remember. Did I ever tell the story how I told your father I was pregnant with that day? What I did?
No.
Okay, we were living in New York, and in the suburbs of Crown Heights, the suburbs I call it. Anyone who's familiar with Crown Heights in the 1970s knows what I mean by suburbs of Crown Heights, Nostrand and Montgomery, the war zone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We know it's New York City in the 70s and 80s. It's not the brightest,
Yes.
bestest spot.
So anyway, I went to the typewriter. I typed out a letter and it said, Dear Mr. Angster, your applications for fathers of future Lubavitchers has been overwhelmingly accepted by our committee. Congratulations. We wish you the best of luck in the raising of your future Lubavitcher. Sincerely, Committee for the Preservation of Jewish Population.
I think I remember
And
you.
I told you that. Oh, I told you that
Yeah, you talked about that.
on the
What about
podcast.
what was the feeling like when you first gave birth to Atty?
I kind of like disbelief. Like this is what was inside of me. What? This is a human being? I mean, because you're so used to being a single person,
Yeah,
you know, thinking of yourself and then afterwards your husband and it's like if the first year of your marriage is like boyfriend and girlfriend almost, it's like I would like about being married to your father. That first year was I said it was like having my best boyfriend around all the time and he doesn't have to go home and he can stay here.
that's really
So
cute.
it was like I total disbelief, like wow. I said to your father, see what happens, you shake hands, look what happens.
Yeah, I knew it. That's really cute. And how is your family's reactions?
Well, what happened was when I was in labor, we told our family, if I go into labor on Shabbos, please do not call the hospital. You're not doing us any honors by breaking Shabbos and calling the hospital. Wait till after Shabbos. You can call us. We'll tell you all about it. Well, yes, I did go into labor right before. Yeah, it was Friday morning. I went into labor, so I was still in. I was still in. I hadn't given birth. Shabbos that I forgot when Shabbos was then. Had to be like 7 o'clock, something like that. Etty was born a little after 8.
Hmm.
So the Shabbos had come. In fact, your tati, uh, around 7 o'clock, the nurse midwife took him to her office so he could light Shabbos candles. So her office was in the hospital. So she took him to the office part so he could light Shabbos candles. And so anyway, the family kept calling and calling and calling. And I thought, oh, my family's so concerned. They're so concerned. They kept calling because they had a gambling pool about when the baby would be born. And they were calling to see who won.
Who won?
Well, my older sister was very concerned about me. So what happened was after Etty was born, they had no rooms. All the rooms in the maternity area were taken. So they said, we have a section of the hospital for gynecology, for gynecological recovery after operations, which we don't do on weekends. So that entire ward is empty and there's beds, plenty of beds there. So, you and your husband can stay on that ward. And hopefully, later on that day or later on that night, we'll have a room available for you in the maternity section. So we said, okay, no problem. So it was that night, my sister called, my older sister was concerned about me.
Hmm.
And so she called the hospital and the nurse, not the nurse, but whoever took the call said, well, let me look up her name in the records and see what they have written down. So she says, it says next to her name that she's in the intensive care recovery ward. And my sister goes, what? She was passed out, like she got so worried.
Oh gosh.
Finally, after Shabbos, she called again. This time I was in my room and I said, hi. She goes, I said, I'm fine. She goes, and she told me, she said, I called, she said, I'm sorry, but I couldn't resist it. I called during Shabbos and they told me you were in the intensive care ward. And I explained, no, it was a section of the hospital where they do gynecological recovery after operations that they don't do on weekends. So that's where they had to put me temporarily.
What?
but she was so worried.
Well, I know I'm trying to understand like back in the day because I don't think Tati was allowed in the room at the time back in
Yes,
the
he
day.
was.
He was allowed
And
in the room.
by the time the idea of the father staying in the waiting room was during the 1950s and like early 60s. By about the mid to late 60s, that's when they changed their mind and said, listen, the father, this is not good for the baby. It's not good for the father, that the father needs to bond with the
Hmm.
baby. So that's when they started to have the father in the labor rooms during the birth. So that the father could pick up the baby as soon as the baby was born and have and bond with the baby.
And I think we talked about this also that like Tati was very squeamish with everything.
He couldn't stand the sight of blood. And his parents had wanted him to be a doctor.
Oh, really? His parents really wanted him to be a doctor.
He can't stand the sight of blood. It makes him totally nauseous.
That's very funny. Um, out of curiosity though, um, so what was it like first holding like Etty the first time?
Wow. Like, first of all, blonde hair, blue eyes, peaches and cream complexion skin. I'm looking, what? where this? So what did you? I looked at him and I said, "Oh, come on! Did you switch my brown hair, brown eyed Jewish baby with some Irish Catholic kid?
Yep.
Where's my Jewish baby with the dark hair and the dark eyes?"
So
And needless to say, I was in my family. I was the bunt of every single milkman, mailman, Sears repairman joke.
that's awesome. What did Tati think?
Oh, he was just enthralled with that. It's just he picked her up. He looked at her, he goes, "You are my little girl, and I love you very much." And just
Oh,
looking at her, and he couldn't put her down. He was just holding her, looking at her. The sweetest little girl.
how long were you guys in the hospital?
He admitted to me
Yeah,
that when the nurse midwife came out and told him that it was a girl, he was a little disappointed because um had it been a boy, we could have had a opinion of then.
yeah.
Um, but at first he was disappointed, but then he came in, he says, and then I saw her. And
Oh,
nothing like his little girl.
oh, it's adorable.
In fact, one time when your father never used to wear cologne,
Mhm.
I probably told you the story
we
already.
we
And
did we talked about
yeah,
this already.
yeah, when he came in from work, he put on cologne.
Yeah, Front Cologne for his little
Because now,
girl.
now he had to smell nice for his little girl. Yes.
That's awesome. Um, how long were you guys in the hospital for?
In those days, the insurance would pay up to 3 days. And in fact, if the nurse midwife or doctor said that you needed more
Hmm.
because of exhaustion or whatever excuse they gave, they would actually pay maybe for even 4 days.
Oh wow.
Kid you not. So they I think I was there. I was there about 4 days around.
And you guys just went into the apartment. How did you guys baby proof the apartment? Did you guys like get what did you get beforehand? Did you guys have registries back in the day?
Um well, we were of the belief, there's a Jewish belief that you don't do
Yes.
that before the baby's born. So your father and I held by that. So after the baby was born, the it was very nice. Your Bubby Donna um grabbed my mother and she says, "Come on," she says, because I never had a bridal shower.
Hmm.
And so she says to her, "Come on, you know, Zalka never had a bridal shower. You and I, we're gonna go together, we're gonna pick out a crib and we're gonna pick out a changing table, and we're gonna pick out a set of drawers." And she goes, "And come, we're gonna split it, you know." So she did. So they went out there, some store, I forget they went to. No, you didn't order stuff online in those days.
Of
You had to
course.
actually go to the store. So they ordered the crib and they ordered the changing table and a bureau.
Hmm.
And the crib wasn't ready, so the store sent a cute little, like, it was like a wicker, like one of these wicker baby baskets. I don't know how to describe it. A bassinet?
I
I
guess.
guess you call it a bassinet. It was cute. It was white with a pink bow. It was very, very cute. But wouldn't it would be fine for a newborn for the first few weeks. But beyond that, you'd have to, of course, go. But they gave it to us in the meantime while they were filling the order for the crib and sending it.
So out of curiosity, like how did you feel in regards to being in the community, first married couple, then not having kids, and then having a child? How are those stages feeling like in regards to, I guess, feeling like you're being a part of something?
It's interesting you should mention that. It was like, I remember when I was in seminary, was a Mechon Khan, well, actually it was Beis Rivka. I was going to Beis Rivka Mechon Khan, and one of the teachers there was talking about the prophetess Hannah, and and the Shiras Hannah, and she said that one of the things that Hannah, one of the reasons Hannah felt very badly about not having a child was that she didn't feel one with nature. That nature is, you look at the birds, you look at animals, male, female getting together and producing offspring. This is nature. This is the whole run of the world. And it wasn't until her child was born, Shemuel, Hanavi was born, that finally she felt like she was part of the nature of the world.
So that's how you felt when you finally were like had a kid.
It's yeah, it's let's say it. It's like a whole, it's like a whole, like being one with the universe type
Hmm.
thing.
So how defensive were you, or how worried were you when you first had her, and then when did it eventually, like, I guess, die off?
Well, when I first came home, like people were coming to the house every day and helping me out. My mother came, Bubby Donna came, Tati's Aunt Greta came and helped me out. And then when I was finally left alone with the baby, and your father had to go back to work, and the people were, it was the end of a week. It was, and basically by the end of the week, people had pretty much gone home and everything, and I
Hmm.
was left by myself. It was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? It's like, I gotta actually take care of this baby by myself.
So,
But your instincts do kick in, and you know, you eventually adjust. I mean, you adjust, the baby adjusts to you. It's like, it's like anything else that's new in life. It takes a
yes.
while, and you find the things that work, you find the things that don't work, whatever. Um, my problem, your father's and mine, our problems were that in many respects we were pioneers, you might say. Um we were the first in our families to be from, which was a different lifestyle that our families weren't used to. We I was the first in my family to actually breastfeed my child. And I think we spoke about this once, that my mother and my mother-in-law, they were from the generation that was unfortunately totally propagandized
Yeah, by
against
bottle only.
breastfeeding. Yeah. And so they weren't so happy that I was breastfeeding. And so it was like, them, whenever there was any problem at all with the baby, maybe your milk disagrees with her.
Yeah, you've talked about that. You mentioned
Yeah,
that a couple
right.
times.
We said that, yeah. So anyway, anything else before I go into the other topic I wanted to discuss?
Well, yeah, I mean, I really want to. Well, I wanted to go elaborate more about, I
Mhm.
guess with having your first child. Did you and Tati originally have plans to raise her one way, and then over time you started developing your own different method of maybe this is better?
Well, what I appreciated very much about being a Torah observant Jew is that the Torah is a guide, and it's wonderful because there's a lot of doubts that you won't have. You have a guide, the Torah, and basically that this is how your child's going to be raised. She's going to be raised in a Torah observant house. And in a way, I kind of feel kind of like sorry for like people who don't have that kind of religious guide, because there's so many crazy ideas that are out there in the world.
Well,
that people, want to raise their children with. And with Torah as a guide, these crazy ideas that are floating around don't even fit into the picture.
well,
You know, basically how you're going to raise your child. Now, as far as like discipline was concerned, there was a big difference between my parents' generation was the kind like whenever Etty would get into something, I would take her, I would try, I didn't want to hit her, so I would take her away and I would try to put that object like higher so she couldn't get to it. And my mother-in-law said to me, all you got to do is smack their little hands
oh,
because that was that generation's philosophy.
yeah,
Kid did something wrong, give him a whack. And
yeah,
my generation, we were trying at that point to get away from that type of upbringing.
yeah. I think we're starting to get a little more further and further away. They talk of this thing called gentle parenting. I think I've talked about it a little bit with you. I don't like that it's titled gentle parenting because it gives the wrong idea. It makes people think that it's supposed to be a passive parenting, but it's not. It's
No.
just being involved and explaining to your child what's going on a child level, but explaining to them and letting them
Mhm.
understand what's going on instead of just barking orders at them, expecting them to listen. Um,
Well, I had a friend who told me about a friend of hers that when the mother would try to explain something to her kid, he would just cross his hands and go, boring, boring. And instead of her friend disciplining this kid in any way or correcting him, she would just start to laugh. She said it would just totally crack her up. So I said to this friend of mine, if that were my kid and I was trying to explain something to him about that he shouldn't do, and he would go boring like that, I'd show him something real exciting.
Smack across the face. How's your back to listening to your parents? If a child
But
goes
there's
boring, I
a
don't
point.
think.
There's a point where, hey,
Well,
this
well,
kid has got to know that there's a limit. I don't believe in doing it on a regular basis. I don't believe in doing it the way my parents did with me. And the way my grandparents did it with my parents, oh my God. That would in this day and age, that would have landed my grandparents for sure a visit from Child Protective Services, no doubt.
Child Protective Services will be knocking on my door. You know what? They never did, and I think we've mentioned that
Actually, they
before.
did. They did one time.
They did. What do you mean? When do they? Like what?
You
What
guys
time?
weren't home.
Oh, well, what was the complaint?
It was from of all things a friend of mine,
Oh, she ratted you out.
and she just she felt that, I don't know, the funny thing was she called top Child Protective Services on us.
Yeah.
And afterwards I called her, I said, and this is a friend, I said, look, I said, if you think I'm doing something that's not correct for my kid, I said, you know, you come to me, you talk to me about it. Okay, you don't go calling Child Protective Services on me. I said, because I'm not doing anything that God's been life threatening or, it's going to cause any injury or anything like that. Maybe I got mad, I yelled at my kid. Okay, that might have been it. We all do.
So what was it?
So,
What
but
exactly?
the funny thing about her is she wound up beating up one of her kids so badly he had bruises.
Oh, but
Yeah.
what did what was the complaint with you? What was the complaint with your with like that they felt that Child Protective Services were called on you? What was the initial like concern?
I don't know. She heard me yelling at one of the kids.
Oh, really? Because of yelling?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's elaborate. Um,
But there was one time, in fact, the same woman went and called the police. And the police were really nice. They came in and the police officer spoke privately to each of the kids. Each of you were, I don't think you were even born then or something. He called each kid individually into the kitchen, spoke to them for a while, came out with a piece, with a notepad, and he says, your children are not being abused. He says, I'm going to write down unfounded.
why would you be like remotely, connected to this person if like two times calling CP on you? That just sounds like just a toxic personality that you probably wouldn't want to have anything to do with. Did you
Well,
feel bad for her?
our kids were friends.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to interfere in that. I don't like this business about telling my kids that they can't play with another child. I don't go for that type of stuff.
Yeah,
And later on, never, she needed a lot of help.
I can see.
She needed a tremendous amount of help. Much later, she became very sick.
And paranoid as well, I'm assuming.
Mhm. I'm not one to hold a grudge, am I?
No, it's just well, I understand the importance of not you know restricting your ability to hang out with another child, because I remember being a little kid, like 6 years old, and this like neighborhood family. I think I've talked about this like on the podcast a
Yeah.
while ago, where like I said a bad word. I didn't know what it was. I was like 6. I just thought people that's what you say to people. And like because of that, like the parents like made sure I never hung out with their kids ever again. And I was kind of like upset because I was like, what is going on? Why am I not allowed to hang out with you? And like, you can't talk to us anymore. And they would walk away.
That's
But
sad. I don't believe in doing that.
I don't think they do. People do that a lot nowadays. I think it's something that, maybe that is more of an old school attitude. I think people have more of a positive perspective of handling relationships, especially at that age, you know.
So how
Um,
are you finding being a new parent?
Honestly, I don't want to jinx it, but it's not as terrible as people say it is. It's just it was just I was expecting such treacherous hell. Such treacherous hell. Like just the
What
worst
were
of
you
the worst.
expecting? What kind of?
I was expecting like Chinese torture situations where it's like you're never gonna go to sleep. You're never gonna be happy. You're gonna be miserable. Your whole life is taken away from you. All this other stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm actually very happy and very lucky to be in the situation. I am tired, that's for sure, but like
Well, I
nothing.
can say as a mother, like I told somebody today, as a mother, every form of noxious human liquid has been dumped on me.
I will refrain from comment. Um, but yeah, it's just I don't think I think people make a bigger deal out of it than what it really is. But I do get very angry when I hear people being like, "Oh, I can't be a parent. Oh, I can't have children. It's just it ruins my time. I just doesn't make take it takes away from my time." I'm like, "What else are you doing with your life? Like, what do you think is so important that you can't have a child?" There are thousands, millions, billions of people that unfortunately can't have children or are trying
Right.
to have children, and you probably can. And because you're just a
Yeah.
selfish, self-centered person, you think that's okay? Like,
But you know something,
whatever. That's again,
I've come to a conclusion about people like that you can't live people's lives for them.
no, 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 not
You
at
can
all.
only, and the thing is, I just feel very sorry for them. They'll never know with that attitude, they'll never know the joy of actually, having children and raising them.
I
It can
think
be
there was
very
a,
fulfilling, yeah.
I think there was like there was a rabbi that I saw on Instagram. I think it was Manas Friedman, where it's like,
Hmm.
you have a lot of people that are very anti-kids. They all kind of fit the same category, the same type of person. And then fine, they probably shouldn't have kids because their whole ideology shouldn't procreate.
Mm.
Something along that level. Maybe more of like a lot of times you have like these people like that are more like on the lines I would say like not all the time. This is a
Uh-huh.
generalization, but yeah, these people that are like are atheists and they're worried about populating the world, and they're somehow so concerned about global issues, but that's what they think they're just not ready to have kids or don't think it's right to have kids. Um,
Mm.
but it's just so funny because when you look at other um countries that have had these moments of like, well, we're not going to have any kids, because we want to help the world, their population dwindles and they have a whole another issue they got to tackle. We're almost out of time. I just want to tell you that I love you. And do you have any words you want to say before the podcast is over?
No, I still want to eventually get to my topic